Authors Class.
Hi everyone, welcome back to Book Buzz, where we bring you the latest and greatest in the world of books. Today we have a very special guest named Paul Joel, who has written a book called A Man Like You and Me, A Supernatural Adventure Story. I have Paul here, and I would like to introduce him. Hi, Paul.
Hi, how are you? I'm very happy to be a guest on your show.
Yeah.
Privileged.
Yeah, no, we're really happy to have you. Can you just tell me a little bit more about yourself?
Yes. Well, first off, the book has two main characters. I'm the physician depicted in the book. Okay, I'm a physician. I'm board certified in internal medicine and board certified in pulmonary medicine, lung disease. And the beautiful blonde is patterned after my wife, who's probably the most beautiful woman I've ever seen in my life, and is the closest thing to a living, breathing saint you'll ever see, and is like the perfect human being. Okay, she's brilliant. She's a terrific wife, a terrific mother, and she's basically a living, breathing saint. And to tell you the truth, it's kind of annoying to live with somebody like that, because every day you see how she manages through things, and then I look at myself, and it's like a slap in the face of, you know, why can't I do that? Why can't I be as like that? So it's kind of annoying. I'm always being pointed out my deficiencies. Okay, but I met her when I was a pulmonary fellow at Mass General, Harvard, and she was at that time working in the ICU as a nurse and also getting her PhD in biochemistry at the same time. So you have to be pretty smart to do that, and you also have to need only 3 hours of sleep. And that's, and I only need about 3 or 4 hours of sleep. So it was, I always used to think it was kind of like a setup. I never believed in God because of what happened to my parents during World War II. They were Polish Jews, and everyone in my mother's family was murdered except for her. Everyone in my father's family was murdered except for him. And he had this great immune system because he came home from work one day and his infant son and wife were murdered, and he ran for his life and lived without any shelter. You live 3 or 4 winters with no shelter, sleeping in the snow, sleeping in the rain, stealing food, buying food, working a week, moving on, whatever it is. So he had this great immune system that I inherited. And it was like a gift from God. Like the kids would come home from school and promptly give it to the other brother and then give it to my son, and all 3 of them would be hacking away. And somehow my kids would say, Dad, how come you never get sick? And I said, well, I get sick. I'm a human being like everybody else, but I get sick for an hour. And then this immune system kicks in and kills everything. And that I was aware of. What I wasn't aware of is I had this great memory. It wasn't like a photographic memory, but it was pretty phenomenal. And I never really thought much of it. I didn't think it was anything special. But it really was. And a perfect example is I'm an intern at Kings County Hospital in Brooklyn, New York, and this genius, Dr. Howard Lyons, is in charge of pulmonary lung disease. And he's the smartest person I ever met, including all the people at Harvard. And he had 2 mottos. The first motto is, the most important one is, if you know the patient, you don't need the chart. So normally the underling sees the patient, and then at the conference the next morning report, he presents the case and reads his note. But he would take the chart. And he expected you, let's say if you had 3 or 4 admissions, to memorize everything on the chart. And nobody else could do that. They would kind of cheat and say, well, the labs are normal except for this, this, and this, but I memorized everything. And I didn't think much of it, to tell you the truth. And then because of his letter of reference, I got to do a pulmonary fellowship at Mass General, Harvard. So I get there the first day, and there's about 8 patients that are being followed on the pulmonary service throughout the hospital. So thinking I'm supposed to memorize this, I get there 2 hours beforehand and see all these patients and memorize everything on these 8 charts. And I meet the attending, Dr. Hales, on the first ward, and we walk over to the chart rack, and I hand him the chart. And he looks at me like I'm crazy and says, look, I don't know if you know what's going on here, but I'm your superior. I'm your boss. I'm the attending. You're the fellow. You're supposed to present the case to me. So then I told him what Dr. Lyons said, and he knew Dr. Lyons. He said, this will save you time. You can look through the chart while I present and then write your note now instead of coming back after this and writing notes. It'll save you a lot of time. So we did that for the first one, and then I handed him the chart for the next one. He says, you know this one too? I said, yeah, I know all 8 of them. Now, the best part of the story is this. We get to the ICU eventually, and I had been there a couple hours beforehand, so there's a different nurse now. There's a shift change. And he's standing on my right. This is 1978. And I'm looking at this back of this nurse's head, and it's long blonde hair. I remember thinking, okay, the width of her shoulders isn't wide. She's not fat. And then she turns around, and I see her face, and I stop and say to myself, oh, my God, what is this doing here? This is the most beautiful woman I've ever seen in my life. What is this doing here in the midst of all these tubes and respirator and everything else? And I hear Dr. Hales in my right ear say, you want to tell me how this patient got on the ventilator? You know, we're pulmonary. That's what we're here for. And thank God I didn't say this, but the next thought was pulmonary. Who gives a crap about pulmonary? Look at this woman. Anyway, we were married 41 years now. It's the first time I saw my wife. So she's used to having somebody who has a memory, okay, not a moron. And anyway, some other supernatural things happen in the book. And I'm the physician depicted in that book. It's like a real life story. It's based on a true story. So going back to the book, again, it's called A Man Like You and Me, A Supernatural Adventure Story by Paul Joel. And it's available on Amazon and Barnes & Noble and Ingram, Spark, and whatever, Kindle, KDP. And so the book starts with the actual miracle that happened on October 15th, 1982. In real life, we're on this vacation. Okay, we didn't really have time to have a honeymoon. So we planned this 6-week vacation with the Europass, traveling to Western Europe. And of all places, we're in Germany. And of course, the whole world is different when you're with my wife. The whole world is a better place. Germany is beautiful, okay? And it's really stupid to hate Germans. They weren't even alive when this happened to my parents at this point, okay? So why are you hating people who have nothing to do with this? So that's one of the take-home messages of the book. Don't hate people. Anyway, so we're in Germany going to see this beautiful castle in Neuschwanstein, built by Ludwig II in the 1800s, way before Nazis. And it's gorgeous. And so the bus stops in the middle of nowhere. And on one side of the street is a coffee shop that obviously paid the bus company to stop there. And everyone, including my wife, gets off and goes into the coffee shop to eat something, drink something, use the restroom, except me. Across the street, there's this little church. And, you know, I didn't believe in God then, but sometimes they're nice to look at. And I didn't feel like I had to eat or drink or use the men's room. So I walk in there, and the story is, it's called Tears Church, or in German, Wieskirche. You can look it up. And the story is there's this stick figure icon that was in the Good Friday procession. And people agree that this is ugly, so they threw it in the barn for a couple of decades until somebody realized there were actual tears coming from the eyes of Jesus from this thing. So they built this church and put it on the altar. And I walk in there and sit down, and your eye is drawn to this because everything else is gorgeous except for this thing. And true story, so I sit there, and then I get this thought. As if someone is talking to me, but I don't hear any words. It's not an auditory or visual hallucination. I love you. Your sins are forgiven. And suddenly, like St. Paul on the road to Damascus, like, you know, my name, I believe in God. I was converted. So I'm all excited. I'm happy. I'm thrilled. And I tell this to my wife, and she sees that something's going on here. And we were in the process of checking out afterwards from the inexpensive hotel that we're at. And the idea was to sleep overnight on the train to go to Vienna the next day. And so I say to the clerk there, what's one of the nicest places to eat around here? We could take the next train. Okay, we have a Europass. We could take the next train. It doesn't have to be this one. And he says, well, probably the restaurant at the Four Seasons Hotel is probably the nicest place here. So I said to my wife, let's go there. And he says, you can't get in there. I said, what do you mean? He says, well, it's a Friday night, apparently October 15th, 1982 is Friday, and you need reservations. It's a very small restaurant. Plus, you have jeans, and he didn't say sneakers, he said running shoes, and backpacks. She needs a gown, you need a suit to get in there. So I remember thinking to myself, nonsense. If the creator of the universe is just communicating with me, of course we're getting in. So we run down there, and there's a doorman with a top hat and a coat. He looks at us, and I ask him where the restaurant is. It's on the second floor. He says, "Let me take your backpacks for you. I'll give them to you on your way out." Basically, we don't allow people dressed like you with backpacks in our lobby. So I walk up to the second floor, and the guy asks me my name, and I tell him, and there's one empty table, and we eat there. We have like the greatest meal I've ever had. And the waiters and the piano player are in tuxedos. All the guests, except for us, are in gowns and suits. And the piano player was playing this song, and the name of the song was "A Man Like You and Me," which is where the title of the book comes from. So I asked one of the waiters if he knew the lyrics, and he wrote it down for me. It's by Jarry, whatever, Michelle Jarry. And basically it says, it doesn't matter if you're rich or poor, we're all slaves to our fate. We all have a fate, and that's it. Okay? And that's kind of where the title of the book came from. And while we're at this meal, okay, my wife writes a note on a sheet of paper with a listing of things that makes no sense at all. Okay? It has St. Bridget, like St. Bridget of Sweden. It has 4 founders. It has Marcus. Subsequently, I found that was the 34th Pope, and the first Pope, by the way, to die of natural causes. How do you like this? You're elected Pope, and the first 33 people in the opposition are murdered. So congratulations, you're the Pope. And then there was Paul, and then Stephen spelled with a PH, and a couple other things. Again, 4 founders, which in my mind meant James, Paul, Peter, and John, what I consider the 4 founders of the church. Anyway, so in the book, she's not there yet. And in the book, I just see this sheet of paper on the table there. Anyway, so after that, she notices that on this little map that they hand out for tourists, if you'd like one, they give you a map of downtown Munich to see the tourist attractions. And when you fold it a certain way and you open it up, it looked like there was a J where the Wittelsbach fountain is. Okay? And the Wittelsbach family is from Sweden, they ran Bavaria for about 600 years. And there's this gorgeous fountain that's in downtown Munich, and it's beautiful, but it has like a tiny little sidewalk. It's kind of like in the circle of traffic around it. So anyway, somehow we think that the J stands for the name of our first child. And as we're running there, we're looking to see if there's anything with a J written on it. And she says it's James. It means James. And I remember saying to her, "Well, what's wrong with Paul or with John or Joseph? Those are good names." And she looks at me like I'm an idiot. She says, "It's obviously James." So we're looking to see if there's anything written on that fountain with a James, a John, a Joseph, whatever. And instead, there's nothing written there, but there's an old man standing there. And he looks at me, and he's an American with a Southern accent, which I didn't like in those days because we speak very quickly in New York. And he looks at me and he says, "My name is James. I've been waiting for you for a long time. It's about time you got here." And then he turns around and leaves. And again, the character in the book is called James Paul, which are the names of my 2 sons. So I'm kind of like living this book. It's like a living, breathing kind of Bible in a way. And the main plot of the book is this. In 1917, Our Lady came to Fatima, Portugal, and asked 3 shepherd children to go to the Pope and have him consecrate Russia to my Immaculate Heart with the bishops. And 2 popes have actually did this consecration, Pope Paul and Pope John Paul II, the Polish Pope, but never as requested with the bishops. So in the book, it's my job to do that, to get the Pope and the bishops to do that. And in real life, I believe it's my task to do that, okay? And that's all in the book, all right? And if it doesn't get done, there'll be some kind of nuclear holocaust. Like if I die tomorrow and it doesn't get done, there'll be a nuclear holocaust the next day. And what will happen is man made these weapons of mass destruction, and the evil one will come and set them off, take care of the computers, and they'll all be launched. So the whole planet will be enveloped in a nuclear cloud, and billions of people will die, including my grandchildren and my kids and everyone I care about. Okay, and so in my struggles of having no brain, I'm no hero here. Okay, don't get the impression that I think I'm some kind of hero. I'm not. I'm a regular guy, and so I was ready to give up. I have no brain. I have this peripheral neuropathy. My feet don't work. My fingers don't work. I'm dropping things, and I have no memory. Okay, I'm an idiot. So I called one of the priests I know and said, look, I don't want to go to hell, but is it okay if I just stop eating and drinking and let nature take its course? Because I'm suffering and my wife is suffering. Okay, this is ridiculous. This is not a life. And he said, go for it. I understand that. But for whatever reason, I have one of these people taking care of me who read the book and understands that I was going to go to hell if I did that. He said, you can't tell God to take a hike and pick somebody else. If you think that he picked you to do this, you have to do it. And if you decide to check out it in and quit, you're certainly going to go to hell. Okay? So that's the only reason I'm alive today, because of that intervention. Otherwise, and I keep telling this person, you're no hero, because my life still is terrible. Okay? But again, if I repeated myself, stop me. I was living like this until after 2 years of treatment, they stopped the treatment because nothing had changed. And on the MRI of my brain, there's no more inflammation, but there's destruction of my right hippocampus and right temporal lobe, which if you're left-handed, the right side of your brain is dominant, and that's the part of your brain that's responsible for memory. So there's like no hope that this is going to change. So they stopped the treatment after 2 years, and then a year later off treatment, on April 29th, 2022, I had a real true miracle. My memory came back, so I can tell you the story. It's actually better than it ever was. It was better than before I got sick. Things that I don't want to remember, terrible things like getting molested right now. And I still have the same change on the MRI. There is nobody on this planet who's left-handed who has no right hippocampus and right temporal lobe who has a memory, okay, except me. So the book is about miracles. The purpose of the book is to increase faith in the reader. And I'm not talking about whether the reader is Catholic or Jewish or Muslim or an atheist. It's to increase faith in God, the same way that I had that gift. And that's the purpose of the book. And so I'm excited to have the opportunity to talk about it. And I'm actually a walking, living, breathing miracle, because there's nobody with this finding on their brain who has a memory, who's left-handed and has no right hippocampus and right temporal lobe. So, and then to top it all off, about a week or so ago, after I was feeling sorry for myself a little bit, and thinking, okay, I got to get this book has to be a success. Okay, I'm no writer. Okay, I know that, but it's inspired by God. God's basically said to write this book. That's why I wrote it. So it has to be a success. I have to get on shows like this to tell people about it, and hopefully they'll purchase the book and have their faith increased. Okay, but I was feeling down in the dumps about this, and then suddenly I'm on my computer. Okay. And on the desktop is an icon that has a copy of the book. The title of the book is the title of the icon, and the book is there. So I'm supposed to send this book to somebody else to help promote the book and market the book. And so I sent him, I sent him this in an email, and then he emails me back and says, what's wrong with you? And what happened was some commercial information about something that I've never seen before, okay? And it was downloaded on my computer, and then it was saved, and somebody had to save it in that icon, the name of the icon, the name of the book. Asked, it already exists, do you want to substitute it? And you have to say yes, and that's the only way you can do that. And so, just like in the book, somebody took over my computer, and nobody's on my computer. Okay, it's not like I have a computer problem, or I have a one computer, because when I had all these periods of confusion, I would do, I'd answer some ad and somebody would be on the computer and it would break, and I'd call him up and he would fix it immediately. But I haven't had those periods of confusion in a long time. And so this is just what I was describing in the book. And of course, I was a little terrified. The most important thing here is not the book, but to get to the Pope and the bishops and the cardinals to do this consecration in this church in Moscow. And when I wrote the book, I listed, that it's a church in Moscow and not in the Vatican. And you think that it would be done in the Vatican because the bishops meet with the Pope several times a year in the Vatican. But no, when I wrote the book in 1988 and had the copyright in 1990, it was supposed to be in the church in Moscow. And then a few months ago, when I re-edited this book, I became aware of the name of the church in Moscow. It's the Cathedral Church of the Immaculate Conception of the Blessed Virgin Mary. And so, these okay, and again, there's always a match to this, so you're not going crazy. And I'm not comparing myself to the Blessed Virgin Mary, who's immaculate, but even when she was given the news and the Annunciation, and again, I got sick on March 25th, 2019, the feast day of the Annunciation. So she's told that she's going to have Jesus, and she says, well, but I don't have anything to do with man. And she's told, well, everything is possible with God. And I don't care who you are, if you're a human being, later on there has to be some doubts of what the heck's going on here. Okay, and is this real? Was I dreaming? Did it happen? But am I going to be pregnant or whatever it is? And the match, there's always a match, and the match was the visitation. So she runs over to Elizabeth, and who's pregnant with St. John the Baptist. And again, when she was told during the Annunciation, she was told, hey, your relative Elizabeth, who they said was barren, is having a child, and she's 6 months pregnant. And so she runs over to Elizabeth's home, and when she walks in, before Mary says anything, Elizabeth says, and who am I that the mother of my Lord is coming to visit me? So there was the match, that what you were told was true, okay? And I live like that. Like I think, something's going to happen, and maybe I'm disappointed it doesn't happen that day, but it always happens like a surprise, like some other day. So the book, again, A Man Like You and Me, A Supernatural Adventure Story, the title comes from the song on October 15th by the piano player. And it's unique, and I'm unique, okay? Again, I got sick on March 25th, 2019, the Feast of the Annunciation. I was in the hospital until I came home on May 2nd, okay? So that was a very happy day to finally be home. And that's the birthday of my brother-in-law, okay? And then I was off treatment for a couple of years, and suddenly on April 29th, 2022, I have this miracle and my memory comes back, and that's the birthday of his wife, my sister-in-law. So you can't make this stuff up, okay? I mean, and again, I just had something happen on my computer, which is just like in the book. Somebody, nobody came on my computer. Nobody is interested in downloading some commercial information, and nobody is interested in substituting that for the novel, which are all the steps that would have had to be done, okay? So how did I correct it? I got somebody else to send me a copy of the novel, and then I said I want to make a copy of it, and then I clicked the icon for A Man Like You and Me, and they said, well, it already exists. Do you want to substitute it? And I said, yes, and now it's fixed, okay? And then something happened similar to that, but not as bad, a day later on September 15th. But this is what I'm dealing with, okay? And my wife is suffering because, I still have the peripheral neuropathy. I still haven't been able to drive a car since March 25th, 2019, so she has to do everything. She has to do all the shopping, all the driving, whatever. So that's where we are. Any questions?
No, yeah, you've actually been filling in a lot. I had a list of I had a list of questions, but you've literally just been checking them off as you go. So I guess, I mean, honestly, I just probably have like, yeah, you kind of just summarized the whole book. I mean, how it came about. What I would probably just like to ask is, can you share any interesting behind the scenes moments or anecdotes from the writing process?
Well, again, the same way that my wife is this living, breathing saint who's like the hero of my life story. Okay, most people think that they're the hero of their own life story. In my case, it's my wife. She's the hero of my life story. And so the only thing that's different again is in the book, I kind of make her look better. Okay, she's tasked in the book with working for the CIA. Apparently, the CIA finds out about this. They know that I'm supposed to be at this consecration. So first they send some goons to follow me, and I get frightened. And then they say, "Hey, do you want to live in a monastery for a while until with an armed guard?" And I say, "No, I'd like my freedom. I'd like to be able to walk around." And then they introduce the character Mary Beth Kennedy, okay, which is not her maiden name, but it's the same person. And I said, what's the purpose of this person? And he said, well, she's trained, and she could walk with you, be your girlfriend, your husband, your wife, whatever. She could put her arm around you. She could walk closer to you and do a better job. So that's how she's in the book. Okay, she's in there later, and then we have a little bit of comedy thrown in. Okay, in real life, again, we're on this train going to Munich in Germany. It's a crowded train. We're standing in the aisle. She's in front of me, and there's a crazy lunatic with a knife with his back to the train car, about 10, 15 feet in front of my wife. I'm standing behind her, and the people are screaming at him in German, and he's waving his knife around with his right hand, and suddenly he bolts towards my wife. And a normal reaction would be, okay, I'm going to jump on somebody's lap and get out of the way. My wife sees this. She's pretty coordinated. She could have been a professional skier, okay? I mean, she's perfect, okay? She's, again, perfect in every way. But instead, that's not what I did. I grabbed her shoulders and threw her to the left on the lap of somebody there. And then I put my hands on her shoulders and kept my body weight on her so she couldn't stand. There's no way this guy could reach her, okay? The problem is I'm still in the aisle, okay? And my whole side is exposed as I'm leaning, keeping her down there. And by the grace of God, he didn't stab me as he's coming back. He had to actually avoid stabbing me, okay? And then he gets into the next car, and the crisis is over. And I let her up, and this is in real life, and she doesn't even say thank you, okay? Like, this is St. Mary Beth. This is, if you carried her bags from the grocery store to the car, she'd say thank you. But this, I risk my life for her, and she doesn't even say thank you. And for years, I could never understand this. And I would pray to God and say, Lord, explain this to me, okay? How is this even possible? And then I got this god-awful disease, Hashimoto's encephalitis, on March 25th, where most of my memory is instantly wiped out. And then I knew this is what happened to her. Something happened. The evil one came and wiped this. She has no memory of that, okay? And that's, again, one of the pieces of arguments between us, okay? We're suffering in a lot of ways, and financially, health-wise, and everything else, and she says it's all my fault, and she's correct. It's all my fault. But it's not all my fault because I don't love her or I don't care about the kids. It's all my fault because I'm trying to get this consecration done, and I feel like I've had hand-to-hand combat with the evil one and lost. Okay, and now I'm going to say something that's complete heresy. So I'll probably get a lot of letters from your viewers, okay, whether they're Catholic or Protestants. I say the rosary every day. Again, I was working at Astra Pharmaceuticals in the 1980s, and you have to get past the intersection of I-95 and I-90 where you sit there for 2 hours. So I would get there real early, but it was too early to go to work. So it wasn't like I was a holy roller, but I would go to Mass in the morning and to use up some time. And then after that, I'd say the rosary in front of this icon, the icon of Our Lady of Vladimir in St. Luke's Church in Westboro. And I always thought it was kind of funny because St. Luke is obviously one of the apostles, the evangelists, and everything else, but he was believed to be a Gentile. And I always thought it was kind of funny that, okay, we'll let this guy be one of the band here of the Mary Apostles, and we'll actually have a Gentile as one of them because he's a physician. We might need a physician in case we get sick running around these parts of the world. Okay, so I always thought that was always humorous. But, so I'm praying there, and I'm praying in front of a copy of the icon of Our Lady of Vladimir, which is this icon. It's in Moscow. It's in the Tretyakov Gallery. And suddenly I hear like some buzzing noises from the right wall there, and there's a compartment there. So I asked the priest what's in there after the buzzing stops, and there's 3 bottles of holy oil, and the middle one is for anointing the sick. So I asked him for that, thinking maybe I'll need to use that someday. And so I have that still. But another time I was also at the same spot, and there were church bells ringing. And it started off like the Angelus, 3 sets of 3 bells, and then a set of regular bells, so adding up to 34 bells. So I knew when it started, and I can count. So I asked the priest, what's the significance of the 34 bells? And he said, it's not 34, it's 40 bells. So I said to him, well, maybe the guy who's ringing the bells must have miscounted this time. And he said, nobody's ringing the bells, it's on a tape. And of course, many times after that, I listened to it, and of course, it's always 40. So these kind of supernatural things where they're just weird, not right, whatever the heck it is, happen, and then there's a match for it. And again, in the book, my character wins the lottery, okay? And that's the go time. From that on, he's supposed to start with getting this consecration done. Until then, he's trying to survive. And the winning lottery amount is $91,414.34, which is a mathematical impossibility for one person to win that. And it stands for code, okay? 91 stands for the evil one. Now, why is that? Because the evil one took Jesus to the top of the temple and told him to jump. And then he quoted Psalm 91 and said, the angels will keep you from stumbling your feet. They'll catch you. Now, 414, as in the book, is April 14th, when I had this event where it said next week. And then 34 is the 34 bells. It stands for Mary. And Mary is supposed to intervene and help me. And I'm supposed to have the problems of health and financial problems solved and then move on to trying to get this consecration done. So I'm thinking, okay, maybe it'll be September 8th because that's her birthday. That's when we celebrate the birth of Mary. And then a week beforehand, maybe something's supposed to happen, and it's 9/1, it's September 1st, so for the evil one. And I have a seizure, okay? I haven't had a seizure in years, and I'm off anti-seizure medicines because I haven't had a seizure. And these are not tonic-clonic seizures where you're thrown on the ground and biting your tongue. These are temporal lobe seizures where you're just off the program, like you suddenly don't know how to drive the car or use your cell phone. And suddenly I don't know how to download a case at one point here. And suddenly I'm having a seizure for the first time. And, I've had issues up until about 3 weeks ago when I improved, where 3 or 4 times a day for about 15 minutes each time, I would get confused. And if my wife was talking to me during that conversation, during one of those episodes, I could understand what she was saying, I could understand she was speaking English in some of the individual words, but I'd have no idea what the heck she was saying. And she would accuse me of ignoring her and not listening to her, but that's not the case. Instead, I was having these seizures. Well, they stopped a couple of weeks ago. So I'm getting better somehow. I don't know why I'm getting better, because it's not like I'm taking a different medicine or I'm taking any, significant medicines for the brain injury, except for one thing. I am taking progesterone. Okay, now what's the story of progesterone? Again, for all the people out there, this Dr. Lyons was some kind of genius. This head of pulmonary at Kings County Hospital Downstate Medical Center. And he noticed that women who are menstruating seem to be breathing differently, whether on the progesterone part of their cycle or estrogen part of their cycle. So he took in a whole slew of women and tested this, and he was right. They were breathing more, increased rate, increased tidal volume, etc., increased minute ventilation during the progesterone part. So he reasoned that progesterone is probably a respiratory stimulant. And then he took these patients who have central sleep apnea. You've probably heard of obstructive sleep apnea and overweight people who are treated with CPAP. Well, central sleep apnea is much worse. They don't have the signal to breathe when they're sleeping. So they have to have a tracheostomy tube placed in their neck and be put on a ventilator. And then during the day, the tube has to be plugged or there would be no air going through the vocal cords. They couldn't speak. And even with that, it was always a mess because the patients would move during their sleep. The hole in the neck would get bigger or get infected. It was really a horrible mess of things. So he took all those patients, whether they're male or female, and gave them a pill of progesterone. And suddenly, no more tracheostomy, no more ventilator, they're cured. And, people have won the Nobel Prize in medicine for less than that. But he never won that prize. But that's the kind of genius this guy is. And I think of him every day because now I take progesterone. And I'm not taking it because I'm a female. I'm not taking it because I have central sleep apnea, but I'm taking it because of this. When I'm talking to one of my providers, they're telling me, hey, you still have some inflammation there going on. You're still having a brain injury. And maybe you need to take something for that. So I looked up some old experiments on dogs. And if you have there's two groups of dogs. One had pretreatment with progesterone and the other not. And then they induce a certain brain injury in the dog. And then they open them up to see what they found. And the dogs who were pretreated with progesterone have much less of a brain injury anatomically. So I said to myself, hey, why don't I take some progesterone? So I've been on that, and it's kind of like a little bit of a miracle because even now when I'm so much better, if I'm late with that one dose, I take 100 milligrams a day, my brain is not the same. Like I'm not quite confused, but it's still not, the memory isn't quite there and whatever it is. And, the thought process is, as one of my providers just told me the other day, so this is not my idea, this is their idea, they deserve credit for this. Maybe all these patients who have a brain injury from COVID and long hauler symptoms, maybe they should be on progesterone. Maybe we need to do a study on that. Here's the group of patients with long haul symptoms of COVID. They're confused, they're whatever, they're tired, and one group will treat with progesterone, the other will treat with a placebo and see if there's a difference. So I'm just throwing that out there for somebody to catch on, okay, whatever. It's not my original thought. It's this provider. So I think of Dr. Lyons every day, okay? Every time I take the pill of progesterone, and again, if I'm late, I know about it, okay? This brain is not the same. And the other thing is, yes, I've had my memory return, but I still feel like I'm walking around with a foreign brain in my head, okay? This is not my brain, okay? Why? Because I can't multitask. I can't go back and forth quickly. And I never really thought that I had anything special with this memory or this brain. And I always thought it was normal if I was reading a case, okay, and doing a medical review, which I still do, and then my wife came over and started talking to me, I could continue to read and have a conversation with her at the same time. Now, the brain can only do one thing instantaneously, in a split second, but the nerve impulses travel at the speed of electricity. So I thought it was normal. Of course, you can go back and forth quickly because the impulses go at the speed of electricity. So, of course, looks like you're reading and talking to your wife at the same time because these impulses go very quickly. Well, this brain that I have now can't do that. It can't do new things, and it can't multitask and go back and forth quickly. So now, if I'm reviewing a case, which I still do every day, and my wife comes to start talking to me, I've got to stop. It's one thing or the other. Either I'm talking to her or I'm doing the case. This brain can't multitask. And the other thing is it can't do new things. It's like a dog that can't do new tricks. If I'm doing a case and it's on a topic that I've done thousands of times before, I'm good. And I'm still probably one of the fastest reviewers they have. And the only reviewer that they've had in this large company of thousands of reviewers who's never been late with a case. And being late with a case is a disaster because the company doesn't get paid and I don't get paid. So you can't be late. And so of the thousands of reviewers, I'm the only one who's never been late with a case. So I can still do this kind of work. But if it's a topic that I've never done before, I can do it. It just takes me about 10 times as much time to do it. Okay, it's like pulling teeth with this brain. So I'm still kind of frustrated. I'm still praying for a miracle every day, and I'm hoping that I get a miracle today, to tell you the truth, and tomorrow. Now, why is that? What's special about today and tomorrow? If you read the book, and in real life, I wake up in the middle of the night and have this dream, and it's a kind of a weird dream. It's the number 2, and then a separate number, 22.9, okay? And then somehow I was led to believe that this is from Acts of the Apostles. In chapter 2, the apostles are given the Holy Spirit. It's Pentecost, okay? And in 22.9, it describes St. Paul being converted on the road to Damascus, much like what happened to me in Tier's church, okay? And basically, the people with him saw the light, but they couldn't hear the voice. And he said, "Who is this, Lord?" And he said, "This is Jesus. Why are you crucifying me?" And basically, he's telling Paul that when you crucify my followers, you're crucifying me, okay? And he was blinded, and then he had to be led someplace and go to this town, street named Straight. You'll meet so-and-so, and he'll pray for you. And then I think it was Barnabas or somebody else prayed for him, and he regained his sight. And then he became this apostle to the Gentiles, okay, as he's famous for. All right? So, I think maybe 22.9 is September 22nd, which I believe is today's date. And then I think tomorrow is supposed to be special too. Why? Because if you read the book, number one, I always consider myself one of the spiritual children of Padre Pio. He's on my rosary that I say every day. And he had, one of his great mottos is pray, hope, and don't worry. Worry is useless. God is merciful and will hear your prayers. And his feast day is tomorrow, okay, September 23rd. So that's kind of special, okay. And tomorrow, by the way, if you went to Mass, the Mass reading is the parable of the sower. Somebody spreads seeds and goes on this ground, and the birds come, and it's rocky ground. It doesn't hold fast, and it's a whole parable about having faith while you're suffering. And some people receive the word joy, but then they don't have the staying power, and that's all of that. Now, if you look at my book, okay, this is right in the book. If you buy it, okay, there's a listing of the various Mass readings in that book. Again, one of the purposes of the book is to increase faith in the reader. So as you're reading the book, you're going to read part of the Bible, okay? You're going to read part of the Bible. So in the book, there's also a listing in chronological order of the various Mass readings in the book. And if you look at page 56, there's a Mass reading. And then if you look at page 61, there's another Mass reading. And in between is the Mass reading for the parable of the sower. So it should be on pages somewhere between page 51 and whatever, 56, whatever, and 61, okay? And for the life of me, the other day I just looked at that, and it's not there. There is no parable. There is no parable of the sower, but if you look at the end, it's listed there, okay? So there's obviously some kind of weirdness going on there, mistake, some sort, or whatever the heck it is. So I'm thinking tomorrow is also going to be a great day, okay? Something special.
Well, that's great. Well, Paul, can you tell us where to purchase your book?
Okay, the name of the book is A Man Like You and Me, A Supernatural Adventure Story by Paul Joel. It's available on Amazon, on Barnes & Noble, Ingram Spark, and Kindle KDP. It's available in a hardcover, softcover, and it's also an ebook also.
And I believe it's also on Authors Press, correct?
I think it's on Authors Press too.
Cool. Can you tell us a little bit about your experience working with Authors Press?
Oh, come on. They're great. They're fantastic. Okay. The person at Authors Press that I work with the most is Rob Reddington. And he's just, number one, he's one of the people who've read the book, and he's kind of like a disciple. He says, this book is special. Okay. He's not giving up. Okay. He's trying to do whatever he can to get the coverage and the marketing so that people know about the book. And you know, I always, whenever I email him, I tell him it's our book. Okay, it's not my book. It's our book. Okay, and that's the way he behaves. I mean, he's unbelievable. You know, I couldn't ask for a better person to help with this.
That's awesome. Well,
yeah, no, it is.
Well, Paul, unfortunately, we are a little bit out of time, but just want to thank you so much for talking about your book. And you know, for those who are listening, this has been Paul Joel with his book, A Man Like You and Me, A Supernatural Adventure Story, and you can purchase it on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Authors Press, etc. Once again, just want to thank you so much for your time today. And
thank you so much. Thank you so much for having me as a guest. I appreciate it. You take care.
You take care, too. Bye.
Bye.